Hello and welcome to Public Conscience. You are onto the anti-corruption program produced by the Progressive Impact Organization for Community Development, PRIMOG. PRIMOG is a civil society organization working to promote good governance, participation, and accountability in Nigeria. I am Chidozie Ogbonnaya, and I'm with my colleague, Adaobi Obiabomo.
A warm welcome to the program wherever you are listening to us from.
On Public Conscience, we seek to evolve a corruption-free society through the amplification of investigative corruption stories by our partner media organizations and by alerting citizens and the government to their democratic actions against it. We equally promote integrity by amplifying rare cases of the display of honesty by public and private individuals in the course of their normal activities. We appreciate the MacArthur Foundation for supporting the production of this program.
In today's program, we will be focusing on the limitations of the Nigerian media industry in playing its role in the fight against corruption and in holding the government to account as explicitly enshrined in the Constitution. The program will dissect an investigative report on heightened surveillance and attacks on journalists in the country, while the Nigeria Broadcasting Commission, NBC, will join us to talk about press freedom, as well as educate the public on what their mandate is all about.
About 2 weeks ago, Nigeria joined the rest of the world to mark Press Freedom Day. World Press Freedom Day comes up every 3rd May to raise concerns about the challenges that limit and negate the rights of citizens to free expression. And Nigeria as a country must realize the dangers attacks on free press portends on our democracy, good governance, and anti-graft war.
An investigative report by Premium Times says that media houses are tightening their digital security measures out of concerns that new spy technologies have exposed journalists to even greater threats of surveillance and harassment. And according to the media watchdog reporter Without Borders, Nigeria is one of the most difficult places for pressmen.
The National Broadcasting Commission, NBC, set up by the federal government to, among other responsibilities, regulate and control the broadcasting industry in Nigeria. Although lately NBC has been under criticism by Nigerians and the media stakeholders over disciplinary measures meted out on some broadcasting stations in the country. For you out there, do you know that press freedom is a major component of democracy and anti-corruption fights? How do you rate press freedom in Nigeria? And what do you think are the challenges hindering the media from playing a crucial role in the fight against corruption? Do you also know or think that the media is doing enough in the fight against corruption?
Lots of questions there for you to answer, but be ready to join us through phone and text messages during this conversation. The WhatsApp phone line to send your messages to is 0902 265 6167. That is 0902 265 6167. Please indicate your name and your location when sending your messages. And remember that this number is for messages only.
Please begin to send your messages as soon as possible to 09022656167. That is 09022656167. We will give out the numbers to call shortly.
If you just joined us, we are examining press freedom in Nigeria and the limitations of the Nigerian media industry in playing a pivotal role in the fight against corruption, as an investigative report by Premium Times reveals that journalists in Nigeria are increasingly under attack.
And according to Premium Times survey, 40% of Nigerian journalists were under surveillance in the past. 85% were attacked in the course of their job, while 50% were attacked by state actors. But joining us in the studio to throw more light on this investigation is a Premium Times reporter, Kabiru Yusuf. Welcome to the program.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
All right, we also have the editor-in-chief of Forefront Magazine and Online, Amos Dunia. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right. We are going to have a representative of the National Broadcasting Commission, NBC, Susan Obi, join us via the phone to explain to us most things as it regards the mandate of NBC. Maybe it's a good place to start off with. We have Susan will be joining us, a representative of the NBC. Thank you for joining us. Okay. All right. Let's go straight to issues bordering on NBC and their functions. The National Broadcasting Commission is known these days for wielding its big stick against airing broadcast stations. But help us understand better the functions of NBC, apart from the big stick, apart from disciplining airing stations.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm glad for this opportunity to talk to us about some of the mandates of the Commission. Let me start by saying that before now, Spectrum, which is a platform where broadcasters operate, belonged to government and was operated by government, solely by government. But with the vista of private broadcasters coming in, when there was the entrance of private broadcasters into the Broadcasting Commission, there was need for Spectrum to be managed. And that is why NBC came in. NBC manages Spectrum. Spectrum is a scarce commodity, which NBC manages in trust for government. Another function of the commission is that because there are now many players in the industry, there is need for an umpire, which was agreed by all. There's someone to say, okay, this is where your limits are, this is where your frequency ends, this is where your frequency begins, this is where it ends, this for another begins, this is where it ends, and these are the rules we agree on. Just as there are rules in a football game, there are rules in broadcasting. So that that's one of the things NBC does to ensure that these rules that have been agreed by all is maintained. Basically, another mandate of the Commission is to ensure in the course of maintaining these rules, the public safety is guaranteed. Public safety is assured. There could be such that there are no broadcast or broadcast content that could violate the sensibilities of the public. I think basically that's amongst all. These are some of the things we do, amongst several others.
Very important to ensure that broadcasting stations keep the rules. But let's look at how much NBC's execution of its mandate is impacting on press freedom and national development, because some would say that the media that information space is not that free these days. What do you have to say?
I think first of all, let me add that the mandate that NBC charges is also through the Nigeria Broadcasting Code. It is not a National Broadcasting Commission code, but rather a Nigeria Broadcasting Code. This code is a handbook put together by broadcasters and stakeholders in broadcasting. Everyone who has an interest in broadcasting was invited by the NBC to throw up this regulation for broadcast content. The code is reviewed at a period of 4 years, so the code is also due for review this year, and broadcasters and other stakeholders will be invited. It's a time when they come in and decide, this is the rules we have, these are the things we should do, these are the things we should not do. In the previous years, we have had this as a provision of the code, but we find that it's not something we can implement. So why don't we adjust or add or remove or introduce? So the mandate of the Commission is not just set up by the NBC, it's something the rules that were agreed on by broadcasters and stakeholders in the Commission. When you talk about NBC impacting on press freedom, I have said it at one engagement before, at the previous engagement, and I'd like to say this. Freedom has its responsibility. Freedom does not come without responsibility. But there's an author, Zimbabwe, he said freedom without responsibility is a prerogative of force. So the NBC, in the course of implementing the provisions of the code, or advising stations on implementing provisions of code, reminds them of this sensibility that there's no freedom without responsibility. Okay. How does it impact on broadcast? It means that when broadcasters put out their content, when they disseminate information, they should be mindful of the fact that there's responsibility associated with that, with the discharge of that function. You are responsible to people's thoughts, because broadcasting enables and helps to form opinions, form thoughts on various issues. So you are mindful of the kind of broadcast you're putting out. You're mindful of the kind of content you're putting out. Is this the content that will be able to help people form these opinions, form the right opinions they should form? So you have a responsibility to your audience, have a responsibility to those who are listening to you. It's not just about being the first to break the news or break but what is the impact? You should be conscious and concerned about the impact of that information you're putting out. Is it the right audience? That's why we have like, let me give an instance of the time that there was that crash some time ago, the Bellevue air crash some time ago, and the commission said it was wrong for stations to just show the calculated bodies of the passengers of that flight without since there has been no news. I mean, the families may not have been contacted. It could just be like breaking news there was an air crash.
Okay.
But not to now come in and show the decapitated bodies of the passengers on that ill-fated flight.
Okay, Madam Susan, if you can hear me, while we agree with you that the media space needs to be safe and that the NBC sanctions airing independent broadcast stations, does the NBC, on the other hand, sanction government-owned broadcasting stations when they air?
Of course. There are no different rules for government stations and private-owned stations. There are no different rules. One rule applies to all. Because every person, like I said from the beginning, all broadcasters sat together to put down these provisions of the code, which NBC just implements. It's an agreement by all broadcasters. They decided these are the provisions we want to have in the code. This is how we want to. They consulted best practices. If you look at FCC in the USA and Oxford in the UK, they also have their rules of broadcasting. And there was a research, there's a consultation there. I said, okay, this is how broadcasting operates in the US, this is how broadcasting operates in the UK. Can we now situate around our own country? How do we get broadcasting to operate in Nigeria? What are the rules we should abide by? What are the rules we should conform to? And it was an agreement. This is how we want to run broadcast in Nigeria.
So, Madam Susan, sorry to jump in here. For people who are not satisfied, media houses that are not satisfied and believe that NBC, your sanctions, they are too harsh and contracting press freedom, the provisions of press freedom, what do you tell them?
I like to say that NBC does not just sanction stations. There are procedures in sanctioning. There are letters written. In fact, there are even informal procedures because there are contacts with the station. If you call and say, look, we have observed this broadcast on your station, you need to do something about it. We have observed this infringement of the food, you need to do something about it.
Okay.
Then there are letters written, letters of caution, letters of warning, before even the sanction that we all talk about, which is the fine or the penalty. Yes.
Okay, because of our time, let me just put these two questions for you to just trash, and we will let you go. Because Nigeria is rated as one of the most corrupt nations in West Africa. How can the NBC assist in the fight against corruption? And what are other challenges NBC is facing in the mandate you've been given?
Like I said earlier on, broadcasting is supposed to help people make informed decisions, make informed choices. By reason of the functions of the commission, stations on their own set the agenda. You understand? The stations they set the agenda, they have their content. But the commission does not determine the content of the station. But the commission can, when stations violate the code, the stations are informed of these violations to the code. In the fight against corruption, how NBC can help is to ensure that stations have programs or content that are in sync with that are honest, that are authentic,
Okay.
that have been thoroughly investigated. So
Okay.
that's why the commission asks that. I mean, when you have, that's why the commission asks that there should be different sides to an opinion being expressed.
Okay.
And when broadcasters have someone speaking to an issue, they should have the other opposing.
I guess in the area of balancing.
Yes.
Oh,
The area of balance, should
oh,
balance opinion, yes.
All right. We must thank you so much, Susan Obi, representative of the National Broadcasting Commission, NBC. Thank you so much for bringing forth some of these clarifications and telling us how your functions on public conscience today.
You're welcome, sir.
All right. If you just joined us, it's still Public Conscience, an anti-corruption radio program. We focus today. Our focus is on press freedom and the limitations of Nigerian media in playing a crucial role in the fight against corruption. Back in the studio, I still have someone I look up to for a very long time. He's the editor-in-chief. He's the editor-in-chief at Forefront Magazine and online, Amos Jr. Thank you for staying with us. And Kabiru Yusuf, a reporter with the Premium Times. We are glad you're still here. So let's go straight to your investigation, Kabiru, because you reported, you did an investigation on press freedom. Tell us more about that story, about the attacks on journalists, as it were.
Yeah, thank you so much. So that report, basically, it's not just about attack on journalists. We try to narrow the scope just to look at a topic that increasingly it's also becoming very disturbing. We look at surveillance of journalists by security agencies in the country, and what that means is our colleagues who are investigative journalists and those who are not even investigative journalists, they are increasingly under surveillance by the Nigerian security operatives. And that, in a way, that's what that story tries to tell is to identify some of these cases, what the journalists have been through, their experiences, and what that means for the profession. Because the surveillance journalist is just in addition to other kind of assaults and attacks that journalists have been going through. There's the physical attack, and there are so many cases that we've reported extensively on that. But this is more like a new angle to it, that look, aside from the physical attack and assault that journalists are going through, there is now a new way of surveillance attack that journalists will be placed under surveillance, maybe in the long run. I give example of my colleagues Samuel and Azizat in 2018, how they were placed under surveillance, and through their phone numbers, the calls they've been making will all be recorded, and at the end of the day, the police used that phone number to track them, and when they finally arrest them, they let them know that, okay, this is how we get to know about you, this is what you are doing, and we are investigating you. So instead of going through this, when journalists know that they are being tracked, they are being followed, they are being monitored, that in a way will affect their job, and not just their jobs, it's also sources, their sources who gives them information are also under risks, including their family members. So if journalists are doing anything wrong, like that story highlighted some of the experts who I spoke to, this is the point they raised, that you don't have to place journalists under surveillance. When you are aware that journalists are doing something wrong, they are not above the law. Just invite them, do the right thing, and get them to face the right of the law. You don't have to place them under that kind of pressure.
Probably make them uncomfortable too.
Very uncomfortable.
Job. All right, thank you, Yusuf, for that. But it's time for us to bring in Amos Jr. You've listened keenly, I'm sure, to Susan Obi, the representative from NBC, where she talked about the NBC in executing its mandate, that is ensuring that the media space is safe. And you also heard Yusuf, who talked about the deployment of technology by security operatives in trying to, let me say, gag journalists. And we know that journalists are constitutionally mandated to hold the government to account. How would you react to all of this?
Thank you very much, Adaobi. Let me start with NBC, since you started there. Not too long ago, I think precisely just about 2 years ago, the chairman and members of the board of directors of NBC addressed a press conference in Abuja here, where they accused the minister of gagging the NBC. That time was having one doctor who now as acting DG. Idachaba as acting DG. If you understand, the code was actually not enacted by the stakeholders that ought to enact that code. That's where the problem started from. And the members of the board protested against that and said, in the first place, the minister has no role in the enactment of a code for the NBC. The board ought to carry such an activity out by ensuring that all stakeholders in the media industry participate. That is, you even have a Guild of Editors, NUJ, and other broadcasters, the Broadcasting Organization of Nigeria. They were not participants. We understand that just about 12, 13 people were gathered in a hotel room in Lagos, and then they came up with appending a draft that was already drafted and given to them to sign. That's the problem we're having. You see, you're not having a problem whereby the NBC is the complainant, is the prosecutor, and the judge in his own case. It shouldn't be. There's no law that operates that way. That's why, for instance, you do not have the police arresting you, being the one already who are the complainant and prosecuting you. At the same time, there will be the judge in that case. It's not. Secondly, I am very concerned about the fact that NBC is biting more than it can chew, because I do not see why the NBC will have the powers to impose a fine when it is not a court of law. And that's why I think just last week.
But did they act within the mandate setting up the commission?
You see, if that mandate in itself is faulty, then it means that whatever they do becomes also faulty, because they are operating from a very faulty foundation. I just told you, I said, all they are acting upon is based on the code. And as long as that code was not properly enacted based on the act that established NBC in itself, it means that whatever they carry out is all ultra null and void. Ab initio. Everything about it is wrong. And until we come to the table to allow the right thing to be done, you see, the idea or the attempt, not even idea, the attempt by some persons in government trying to protect themselves in office, not because of national interest, but their own individual interests. In that way, they believe that the moment they can get the media caged, they'll be able to operate more freely. I think that's the problem we're having.
But
and that's what
repealed.
I'm not the one to repeal it,
Yes, but there's
stakeholders. That's where we're coming to. That's why we're talking. The stakeholders should be able to come together. I don't even know why the Broadcasting Organization of Nigeria and then members of the Broadcasting Association of Nigeria have not come up before now. Anyway, but they were the ones that went to court, and then they had a judgment last week. But they had a judgment last week in their favor. That's to show you that all for the court to pronounce the activities of NBC as illegal, unconstitutional, because that code is against the provisions of the Constitution.
But the NBC has also issued a press statement that they would appeal that judgment.
Appealing the judgment does not mean that the court has not ruled on it. So they are free to appeal the judgment. But it does not mean that they are appealing the judgment will make them to win the case. Of course, everybody knows that they are just trying to ensure that they try to cover up whatever inadequacies they have. But see, basically, we must stand up as citizens of this country to ensure that the people are better protected, and not just the government. You see, and until we start protecting the state as against the protection of individuals within the state, we will continue to run into problems. So let's get that understood. Okay. Now, coming to the second question, which you talked about security operatives. I do not have any crisis with security operatives doing their job, but they must also do the job within the limits of the law. They also must understand that journalists are assigned a specific role by the Constitution to hold government accountable. And when we are saying you hold government accountable, it means that you have the right to question the activities of government. But you know the problem we're having today is that we're not allowing journalists to practice because some few individuals, particularly those who are corrupt, are the ones who are always afraid of journalists coming close to them. And because of that, instead of them distinguishing between matters of state and their personal interests, they try to lump up their personal interest and give it a name as if it's national interest. That is not national interest. So let me give you one example. I will not mention any specific name. If a head of a parastatal or a government agency is involved in corruption and a journalist gets those details, if he publishes it, the thing will be that, oh, you've gone against national interest. What is national interest in somebody preferring state resources? So it should rather be the other way, that the journalist should even be commended for exposing corruption and not being wounded the way they are going about it now.
Some people argue that journalists may not be doing their best as in the circumstances they found themselves. But we hit the street, Primark team hit the street to also ask Nigerians if they think the media is doing enough in the fight against corruption. Take a listen to some of their thoughts.
Voices against corruption. Let the people speak.
Hello and welcome to Primark's public feedback series on corruption, called Voices Against Corruption. And we ask, do you think the media is doing enough in the fight against corruption in Nigeria?
I believe that government is using the media because you see every media organization in this country has one politician or the other they are subject to. If my person comes into government, then whatever he tells me to do, whatever he tells me to air, that's what I do. So I don't believe the media also is not helping matters.
If the media is saying there is corruption in a particular place, or they have gotten the looted funds, we don't even know the people that stole the funds. We don't even know where these assets are. You need to tell us that Mr. X, Mr. Y, Mr. Z stole so amount of money, and this person, we need to display his name on the newspaper so that everybody will know that the media is doing its best to see down to the roots of the matter, thereby scaring people or people deterrence in place so that people will be scared of the corruption itself.
They're actually doing their best possible, but one thing about identifying a problem is creating the awareness and following it up. So even if you say this is what the problem, you actually know what the problem is, and there is no implementation or no reinforcement in a way to put an end to it, it will continue like that year in, year out.
Government has created a system that restricts even the media. And the reason is the government has succeeded in creating fear in the minds of the citizen. They come up with all kinds of law that will negate what they believe they are giving to the citizens.
The media is doing enough to say corruption here, corruption there. But always when the media said, what is the reaction of the government? What is the reaction of the security personnel? There is no reaction.
The press themselves seem to be afraid, of being attacked by the people involved. They're afraid of stepping on toes. So people seem to be afraid of talking because they don't want to be nailed.
Primark's public feedback on corruption in Nigeria is produced with support from MacArthur Foundation.
Different strokes for different folks. Different opinion there.
Before we get Mr. Amos to react, let me read some of the messages we have here. This one is from Mayo from Massacre, and it says, whether the media are doing enough to allow press freedom, my take on that is no. the media are not doing enough. For instance, you put out topic for discussion and seek opinion from listeners, but when the listeners want to express their opinion as it is in their heart, you cut them off because you are afraid of NBC. But you, the media, put the topic out there for our opinion. Why then are you cutting those calling in to talk about your topic? Please allow us, the listener, to say it as it is in our hearts.
We'll allow them to say it as it is, but they will also have to be guided so that you don't make comments that you cannot substantiate to an extent. We have to walk along the line according to the code and the principles of journalism.
Lots of messages. They say just hang in there. Let me take another one. This one is from Comrade Ibrahim, and it says, limitation of Nigerian media in anti-corruption fight can be briefly summarized as follows. I'll just take two of them. Poor remuneration of media personalities in their places of work. Lack of a grounded legal position on social media operations leading to abuse, fake news, and uncensored information to the public. Extrajudicial killing of media workers who stood by the truth without anybody or any agency taking care of their families, which then deter others from repeating same.
I will get the listeners to join us in a moment, but I know this has elicited so much reaction from Nigerians, and Mr. Junior here is eager to say something.
Yeah, let me quickly respond to the first person that says that the media is not doing enough. I think the media in Nigeria is doing so much, but he ought to understand too that there's what is called moderation. Why do we moderate? Because we have to moderate to ensure that rules and regulations are followed. There's what is called law of libel, sedition, and so on and so forth. If you allow him to just say whatever he feels like saying, and then it becomes libelous or this, you are the one who will be taken to court, not him. You might not even know where. Yes, and not just even the individual offended can take you to court. So you have to moderate. That's why we have gatekeepers in the media industry. So you are there to ensure that not everything goes out. You have to filter to ensure that the appropriate words are allowed for public consumption. If not, if you allow everything that people want air to be aired in this country, the country will be on fire.
It will be like Rwanda.
Yes, may not
you
allow it.
are always on the field. After opening this phone line, you will tell me if you are doing enough, because you do a lot of investigative work out there. But for you out there, we have to open the phone lines.
Yes, please follow us on our social media platforms at Official Primorg. The spelling of Primorg again is PRIMORG.
And remember that this program is interactive. The WhatsApp phone line to send your message is 09022656167. That is 09022656167. This number is for messages only. Please begin to send your messages now to 09022656167. And we want you to comment and tell us what you think about press freedom. How do you rate press freedom in Nigeria? What do you think are the challenges hindering the media from playing a crucial role in the fight against corruption? Do you think the media is doing enough in the fight against corruption? Do you think the incoming administration should reform or review the disciplinary powers of the NBC? You can now join us. Kabiru, you can comment and tell us how much are you doing? Are you doing enough as a journalist?
Yeah, if I said I'm doing enough, is like
you're praising yourself.
Yeah. But the work we're doing is out there for everyone to see. There's always room for improvement. We can always do better than we're doing, but we have to also say that Nigerian journalists need support from our readers, our audiences, and even the stakeholders. For instance, if you are doing investigative journalism, the only way you can keep going, the only way you can be motivated to do more is to see that people who, for example, have been found of wrongdoing, if people that were found of maybe corruption, stealing public funds, some of these cases, so if people are indicted and they are not being prosecuted and jailed, for instance, you now get to a point where you'll be asking, okay, what am I doing this for? You are doing this as you're carrying out your own duty. That is, you are doing your own enough or your own best, but there is a limit to what you can do. There is a point you get to, okay, this is my stopping point. I've done my best. I've provided you the information that you need. For instance, if you've been following the premium terms, Pandora Papers and the Panama Papers before the Pandora, all the people that were indicted and everything, it's just providing information to the anti-corruption agencies, to the Code of Conduct Bureau that, look, this is what these people have done. Some of them have not even declared their assets. This is against the law. But if they have not done their own part of the job, there's little.
So there's a lot of discouragement coming from that angle.
Absolutely.
When after investigating, publishing, and the government does about it. Okay, let's come to Amos Jr. because we know that investigative journalism is very key when it comes to accountability and holding government accountable. You cannot talk about it without investigative journalism.
And the fight against corruption.
And the fight against corruption. Help us understand how attacks and persecution on journalists these days and other issues hanging around journalism have impacted on that side of the job.
It's a whole gamut and so encompassing. One, let me name specific this thing. There's a journalist in Nigeria, there's a Nigerian journalist that had to leave the country entirely, Jafar. I'm sure you are aware of. But then there's another journalist called Agba Jalingo, based in Cross River, who consistently is always in detention.
That is
because of what? For exposing corruption. Be that as it may, my colleague here will tell you, investigative journalism is one of the most expensive and complex aspects of journalism practice. It takes time, resources, and everything you can think of. There are times that you have to visit particular sources for more than 5-10 times before you get what you are looking for. And to get this information is not easy. The needed information is not easy to come by. Because to even break into some of those offices, you have people who have already lined up and formed a thick wall around themselves when they are occupying certain offices. You either have their relations as the SA, PAs, so on and so forth, cycling there. And then to get access to such files is difficult. Even with the Freedom of Information Act, the Freedom of Information Act is not actually working the way it ought to. Because by the time you apply to an agency seeking for information, you have to even go to court to get this thing, to get a warrant kind of detailing the organization to give you that information. And time is going, because for the time the court will take to even grant you that takes time, and so on and so forth. You could see, but in Nigeria, do we have journalists that have carried out so much investigation? The answer is yes. But
are you satisfied with his responses?
Good from the government. That the answer is no. When I was one of the editors in Blueprint, we carried a lot of stories on Boko Haram attacks. We carried stories ahead of the attacks. What did the government act? It didn't act, and those attacks came. Police headquarters, UN headquarters, and so on. We gave so many of that because we were getting access to information. But were they acted upon? No. Issues of corruption in government. Let me give you a typical example. For example, now, we are having the jostling for Senate presidency and Speaker, that's presiding officers of the National Assembly. Already, why is it that those coming are interested in people that have a lot of baggages on them? It shows you that so much it's already at play.
Some will say you must prove it before it becomes...
It does not matter about the EFCC that ought to prove. Are they talking again? They are no longer talking.
Are you
and
saying
then why is it that you should ask the question, how come suddenly the EFCC that asked someone to appear before them about a month or thereabout is no longer asking that same man to come now that they say the man is going to be one of the presiding officers. Is it the journalist that will go again to now prosecute the man? Hasn't the journalist performed his duties? But the state has refused to do what ought to have been done. So, at every point in time, the journalist in Nigeria has always done what ought to have been done. Because every day you carry newspapers, every day you go to the television stations, you go to radio stations like we are talking now, things are being espoused and exposed. But how much of it gets government attention to act?
Okay, lots of questions there from our guests, but for you listening, you can still call in and contribute to the conversation. Are you satisfied with the job of the journalists? Are you also satisfied with the NBC as the regulator in this space? And also, what do you think needs to be done to ensure press freedom? Kabiru, in less than 2 weeks, a new administration will take place. So what would be your advice to the incoming government on utilizing the media in fighting corruption and delivering good governance?
Yeah, so thank you. The best advice remains that the government first they need to see themselves as the media is not in a way competing with especially anti-corruption agencies who are charged with the responsibility of fighting corruption. They are just complementing their efforts. So the media and the government can work together. I believe so. They can work together. The media can always provide information. They can always work together with whistleblowers to give hints, give links that this is what this person did while in office, this is who should be investigated. So I believe that they can work together, and they must also realize the importance of media in any democracy. There is no way a democracy like ours can develop, can grow without the media playing its crucial role. So if the media, we know how the government is trying in all possible ways, to gag up the media, to silence the media, but without an independent journalism, the government itself cannot function. All of us cannot be public relations. We cannot just be there. What we are doing is just to be praising the government. They've done this. No, the government must realize that now before coming to office, that okay, they can assess the government of this current administration in the last 8 years. What have they done? How have they fared? How did they work together with the media? And if they realized the function of the media, the constitutional function of the media, and what the government is doing, then they will know what they can do together.
Okay, absolutely brilliant. As we begin to wrap up, let me come to Amos Dunia, because the Section 22 is clear about it, that the media have to hold government to account without encumbrances. Where do we go from here with what we have on ground? What do you think, in a way of solution, how will the media, play that pivotal role that we are talking about in anti-corruption and instilling good governance in our system?
One, we must understand, or the government must understand, that the media is the oxygen needed for democracy to thrive. And as long as the media must exist and work, the government should be less combative against the media. They should be able to listen more to the media and ensure that they carry the media along in the fight against corruption. You see, once corruption can be minimized, I'm not saying you can eliminate corruption totally. It's pretty difficult to do because you are dealing with human minds. As long as corruption can be minimized, you will have more development. I give you an example. We are just hearing now that almost about 300 and something billion naira that was meant for Zinguru power project has been siphoned by just 13 civil servants or public servants, that is minister, pansec, directors and so on. And who is suffering for it? The people. But just 13 people have frittered away over 300 billion naira. And then you ask the question, what are they going to even do with that kind of money, if not for the fact that we've gotten to a stage that now people are now thinking of primitive accumulation of wealth that they do not really need. If you have wealth that you cannot spend till you die, and most times people should get to know that once they are no more there, that wealth, their children or offspring can never utilize it the way they ought to, because it didn't even come genuinely, and so on. Bottom line is that the government should see the media as partners in progress.
The government should see the media as partners in progress. It's been a very brilliant conversation with Mr. Modinia and Habiru Yusuf today, and this is how we draw in the curtains.
Before we draw the curtains, I just want to quickly remind us of some of the highlights of our quotations from our guest. Susan Obi said, freedom does not come without responsibility. Yusuf also said the anti-graft agencies should see the media as complementing their job, while Amos Jr. said once corruption can be minimized, it will bring about development.
And you didn't mention that he said that the media is the oxygen needed for democracy to thrive.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much. A robust conversation there. Please visit our news website, that is primognews.org. For all the details of our reports and interviews, visit our website www.primog.org to get all the information about Primog.
You can watch our videos on Primog TV, our YouTube channel. Please subscribe to get reminders when we have a new post. We appreciate our guest, the editor-in-chief of Forefront Magazine and Online, Amos Dunia.
Thank you so much.
We also thank Premium Times reporter Kabiru Yusuf and a representative of the National Broadcasting Commission, NBC, Susan Obi, who joined us via the phone. Thank you all for joining us, those who listened, those who commented and sent message. Public Conscience has the support of the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, committed to building a more just, vibrant, and peaceful world. Get more information about the foundation on its website, macfound.org.
Join us again here next week for another episode of Public Conscience. And remember to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Official Primog. I am Adaobi Obiabumo.
Remember that birth registration and birth certificate are both free if your child is under 18. Help stop the corruption in birth registration and do not pay for birth certificates. And also remember that you can give us information or hints about corrupt acts through our phone at 09022656167 or info@primog.org. I am Chidozie Ogbonnaya. Stay safe.